Chapter 4 Champion Mushers. Stay with me, boy, Uncle Joe called after Okie, but the man's voice was lost in the excited barking of the huskies in the yard. Excuse me, sir, Annie said. What if we go with him? Annie, said Jack, shaking his head. The man turned and looked at Annie and Jack as if noticing them for the first time. Who are you? He said. Jack and Annie, said Annie. We're friends of Okie's and we're champion mushers. What? Thought Jack. Okie's uncle scowled. Champion mushers. How can that be? You're very young. We are young, said Annie, but we have great skills, right, Jack? She quickly added in a whisper, Gold dust. All right, thought Jack. He nodded. We heard that lives were in danger here, said Annie, so we came from the United States to help. Help how? Said Okie's uncle. Take a team of sled dogs and help get the medicine here, said Annie. Right, Jack? Jack took a deep breath. He was a little nervous about losing their way and freezing to death, but he nodded again. We really want to help you, Annie said to Okie's uncle. The man stared at them for a moment, his face lined with grief. I don't know what to do, he said. I lost my wife and my 2 children 7 years ago in the flu epidemic. Nome lost more than 1,000 people then. I fear it is about to happen again. Tears started down the man's craggy face. Jack was stunned. More than 1,000 people died? That won't happen again, Jack vowed. We'll do everything we can. Thank you, but please leave my nephew here, said the man. Do not let him go. Okie and his mother and sister are all I have. Don't worry, we won't let him go, said Jack. Take my team. They are good dogs, said Okie's uncle. They have traveled the trail hundreds of times, delivering mail with me. We promise we'll take good care of them, said Annie. Thank you. The man bowed his head. Thank you. Then he turned and hobbled with his crutch back into his room. Annie took a deep breath. This is a good plan, she said to Jack. Right? Right, he said. He hoped it was a good plan. He felt terrible for Okie and his uncle. Gold dust, said Annie. Jack took off his mitten, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the tiny gold box. He pried open the lid and stared at the glittering dust inside. It's so beautiful, breathed Annie. Jack poured a bit of the gold dust into the palm of his bare hand. We wish to be champion dog mushers to save lives, he whispered. Then he tossed the dust into the air. The room filled with a sparkling gold light. The light gathered around Jack and Annie, then quickly faded away. Jack felt a rush of energy. Wow, said Annie, grinning. I'm ready to hit the trail. Are you? Yep, said Jack. Sure am. He laughed. Quick, before Okie leaves with the dogs, he said Annie. She started for the door. Wait, said Jack. The magic works for 12 hours. He looked at a clock on the wall. It was 8:30. We have to be back by 8:30 tomorrow morning, no later. Got it, said Annie. Then the two of them hurried out of the shack into the freezing night. The huskies were whining and leaping around the moonlit pen as Okie tried to buckle them into their harnesses. Be still, he commanded. Be still. Wait, Okie, said Jack. Wrestling with a dog, Okie looked up at Jack. Annie and I will look for Gunner Cossin, said Jack. Your uncle wants us to take the team by ourselves. By yourselves? Said Okie. Yes, said Annie. You have to stay here. He can't risk losing you. But how will you do this? Said Okie. You don't know the dogs or the trail. We have great skills, said Jack, and we trust the dogs. Your uncle told us they've traveled the trail hundreds of times. Yes, but, said Okie. Good. Then our job is just to help them do their job, said Annie. And your job, Okie, is to stay with your uncle and be near your sister and mother, said Jack. If you are out in the storm, your uncle will be sick with worry, said Annie, and your mother and sister would not want that. Okie stared out toward the frozen sea for a moment. He looked very troubled. I want to go with you, he said finally, but I will stay here for the sake of my uncle. He held the gate open so Jack and Annie could enter the dog pen. Come on, guys, Jack said to the huskies. Let's buckle up. He and Annie pulled off their mittens. Even in the dark, they had no trouble hitching the dogs into their harnesses. I'll get the rigging, said Okie. He grabbed a bundle of lines from the basket of the sled and began untangling them. When Jack and Annie finished putting the harnesses on all the dogs, they hooked the team to the rigging. They quickly and calmly attached tug lines to the harnesses and fastened necklines to the collars. Work with us, guys, Annie said as they tried to hitch the excited dogs to the tow line. A lead dog jumped up and licked Jack's face. Jack laughed. He knew not to scold the dogs and risk dampening their enthusiasm. The team would need their high spirits to run the tough race ahead. Soon all the huskies were strung to the tow line, lined up in pairs. The two lead dogs stood proudly in front, their tails high, their noses sniffing the air. The bells on their collars jingled. Two swing dogs stood behind the leads. Two team dogs stood behind them, and two wheel dogs stood directly in front of the sled. You guys are the best, said Jack. The dogs whined and barked as if eager to go. You are both very good with the dogs, said Okie. Be firm, be fair, give kindness and respect, said Annie. That's how we always treat them. We promise. Thank you, said Okie. Jack and Annie pulled on their mittens. How far is Solomon? Jack asked. About 35 miles, said Okie. In about 20 miles, you will pass the roadhouse in Port Safety. Maybe 15 more, you will come to the roadhouse in Solomon, where you will find Gunner Cossin. Any idea how long the trip should take? Asked Annie. About 5 hours to get there, said Okie. So around 10 to go and come back? Annie said to Jack. No problem. Where does the trail start? Jack asked Okie. Just beyond the yard, said the boy, where you see tracks in the snow. Got it, said Jack. He turned to Annie. How about I drive first? You can sit in the basket and then we'll switch. Okie dokie, said Annie. The dogs were still as she took her position in the basket of the sled. She sat on the wooden slats that held the side railings. Jack stepped onto the long runners that extended behind the basket. He gripped the two handles of the sled, bent his knees, and leaned forward. He felt as if he'd driven a dog sled all his life. I'll get the snow hook, said Okie. He picked up a metal hook that anchored the sled to the snow. He put it in the basket in front of Annie. Then he added the sack of dried fish. Dog food, he explained. Cool, said Annie. All set? Jack asked. All set, Annie said. Okie, please tell your uncle we'll take good care of his team. See you in the morning, said Jack. Good luck, said Okie. Line out, Jack called to the dogs, knowing all the right commands to use. Bells jingling, the lead dogs drew the team straight out in front of the pen. Hike! Jack shouted. All 8 huskies bounded forward and pulled the sled into the cold Alaskan night.